I'm going to go out on a limb and say that 2022 is going to break records in the land business. Why is that? With the onset of COVID, 2019 saw the introduction of a whole new level of crazy in our country. But I'd say that was just the toddler phase of crazy. By last year, craziness grew into its teenage years. With pandemics, mass immigration, crime waves, and supply chain shortages, it's possible that 2022 will be the year that craziness matures into adulthood. The good news is that there seems to be a correlation between the level of craziness and success in the land business. Now, I know that correlation does not equal causation, but it stands to reason that if people continue to move to other states and out of big cities, the land business will benefit. The question is, are you ready to strike now while the iron is hot? If so, listen on as David and I talk about what you can do right now to double your deals in 2022.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Land.MBA Podcast. I'm your co-host, David Van Steenkist, and with me is my infamous sidekick, Mr. Howard Zonder.
Infamous. Haven't been called that before. Are you equating me to Japanese kamikazes?
I don't know. Where'd that come from?
A day that will live in infamy.
Oh, well, I don't know,
I can be deadly when I'm angry, so I guess it's good.
I think I pissed you off, so I better be careful.
Yeah, I know. It is a new year, and finally, winter has broken. We've gotten past gray, gross. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't winter, and now it's blue skies, bright, reflecting on snow here in Connecticut. So my mood is much, much more buoyant than it was in December.
You're not angry, huh?
I'm not angry, and I'm not going to dive bomb your house.
No angry white man syndrome.
So, what are we talking about today, Dave?
Well, we're talking about what to do to double your deals in 22.
That would be a good thing to do.
Yes, it would be.
I want to do that.
How the hell are we going to do that?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think it means that we can't just do what we did last year and expect to double our deals. We got to do something different.
Right.
We got to grow. You know, we were talking in a previous podcast about goals. And one of the things I think I mentioned in goals is that it's not just about revenue and profit. It's about constantly growing our knowledge and trying new things and picking a particular experience that we want to have and go making it happen, even if you don't need to do it, just so that you can understand the process and say, okay, now I know how to do this. And I think that a lot of people, especially when they're starting out in land, they take a course and that says, okay, now get the mail out the door. And so either they all, depending upon the school they went to, they either go and send out all their blind offers or they send out all their neutral offers. Pricing is still a bit of a black art, I think, for people in the early days. But once you kind of get the process under your belt, then I think it's really important to say, okay, now that I've got the basics down, how can I raise my game? And I think that's really what it's all about. Not much in life is a one size fits all solution, and I think land is no exception to that.
Right. Well, I think when we came into the business, you could get a pretty sizable return from just pricing out the county and sending a whole bunch of lowball offers. Now that things are, more competitive and more sophisticated, we've got to spend a little more time on analyzing the areas, getting our prices right, sending the right offers to the right situation. And that's what I believe, is the difference between taking yourself from a hobbyist to seven figures.
Yeah,
And
I totally agree with that. We all started that way, right? When we started, I was doing that. It's like, all right, go get 5 comps, and then price 2,000 blinds and send them out the door. And you, back in those days, back in the halcyon days of 2016, I mean, you could get between 1% and 3% response rate on a mailer. It was crazy good times.
conversion rate. I don't care about response rate. They'll waste my time if I don't convert.
Absolutely. I mean, one leads to the next. I mean, you got to have a good response rate in order to get a good conversion rate. So they
Not
kind of,
necessarily, and we're going to talk about that.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
You might just waste your time with that really good response rate.
You're right. I mean, a good response rate's not good enough. It's got to be the right response rate. It's got to be a good response rate from the right kind of people responding. A bunch of people calling you up to tell you that you're an idiot because your pricing is too low is not a good response rate. You're absolutely right. So,
or the opposite. You get a much larger response rate because you priced everything way too high.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. The response rate has to be good. Good response.
My property for that price, and you're like, look at it. Wait a minute, I screwed up.
Yeah. They all suck. I just want people to say, yeah, I want to sell my property. I can work through the rest.
So you were telling me a little bit about a process called STP.
Yeah. So in traditional marketing, when you're coming up with new product launches, there's this idea of STP, which stands for segmenting, targeting, and positioning. So the first thing we want to do is we want to segment our market. We don't want to be all things to all people because those products never quite make it. I think probably the easiest and most current classic example of this, and this is not to be political, but just to use it as an example, is Donald Trump. Donald Trump understood that he did not need 100% of America to like him. He only needed 50% of America to be passionate about him. And so he was fine ticking off everybody else because he understood I only need this much to win. And so his whole approach to how he communicated was very much to say, I'm going to go after. So a really great example of the power of segmenting is Donald Trump. And not because we need to be political on this podcast, just because it's a really good example. So Donald Trump understood he did not need 100% of America to like him. He knew he needed a smaller group, like maybe 50%, to really be passionate about him, and that was enough to win. And better to have 50%
anyway.
In 2016 anyway. So better to have half of the market passionate about you than 100% of the market being fairly blasé about you. And when you try to be all things to all people and say, I never want to, I don't want to tick anybody off. I want to be, nice and politically correct, or I want my approach to the market to be very generic, then you never stand out. And so better to pick a segment and really say, I am going to be the be all and end all to this segment because I'm going to speak to their heart. And that's true in politics. It's also true in business. So you start with segmenting. And then once you've segmented the market, you've got the X number of segments, then you target, say, okay, I'm going to go after that segment first, and I'll go after other segments later. And once you understand the segment you're going after, now you can build your story, your messaging, your pricing, your everything to meet the needs of that segment. And you want to do that in a way that's not only strong, but competitively strong. And that's what positioning is you want to be positioned very strong relative to your competitors into that specific segment. It's kind of sounds like it may not be true in land, but it is, because the fact is not all properties are the same. Your understanding of properties is not all the same. And that happens within a county and even within a segment of a county. So if you try to just do the one size fits all model, you're going to be leaving a lot of opportunity on the table.
Right. Well, I think, if you're the people who, when you get into this business a while, you start to figure out niches, however you want to say it. And that might be certain types of properties, it might be certain areas or types of properties within areas. Maybe you're someone who specializes in infill lots. You specialize in cabin lots, you know, only the treed stuff, and you stay, kind of vacation type of stuff, and you stay out of the flatlands. You leave that for other people, where you used to spray and pray the entire county. So I think it really also kind of hones our business to where, okay, we're going to have a more targeted focus and stay in our lane, or is it, hey, we want to get as many properties that we can on terms, the cheaper stuff on terms, and that's our strategy. We're a company that has a lot of capital and we want to turn it into cash flow. So we want terms. Or you need to build up your war chest and you're going only for stuff that can give you chunks above a certain price and a certain property type. And, we know people like we interviewed Mitch Milam. He's really niched down and talks about how working hand in hand with a good realtor. I can tell you that from my own experience in a couple of areas that I work, working with a really good realtor and now starting to narrow my net. And so you might say, well, okay, narrowing the net means you're going to send less mail out and mean less deals. Yeah, you might narrow that net on strategy and property types, but then expand that strategy to more areas. So there's all things you can do to really niche down. But I think what we really want to get down, and so that's kind of your segmenting, your targeting, and your positioning, because now you're able to develop an expertise for such types of properties and position yourself as the expert. And so that may impact how you write your letter, but also on the sales side, being better at selling it and things like that. These are some crazy times in the real estate field. Demand is high, inventory's low. If you're a realtor, a wholesaler, or house flipper, you've probably noticed how hard it's become to find quality deals. This is why so many in our industry are looking at land as an outstanding way to add new revenue stream to their portfolio.
If you're listening to this podcast, you already know that land is a relatively unknown niche of the multi-billion-dollar real estate market with huge profit potential. Seriously, what other business delivers 200, 300, 1,000% return on investment deal after deal?
It seems hard to believe, but land really returns 100 to 300% commonly, and sometimes over 1,000% deal after deal. And in the age of COVID, demand for land has never been higher.
Many of our students have already created new revenue streams with land and added 6 figures to their incomes.
We've had clients who have achieved multiple 6 figures in their first year of business. Another paid for all his coaching and pocketed 15 grand on his first deal. Now, not everybody has these kinds of results, but they're certainly possible if you have the right instruction, the right support, and highly experienced mentors.
You don't need another course that promises the moon and then delivers an elementary school education. You need a proven program suitable to your experience and ambition. You need a Land.MBA. The Land.MBA is everything you need to blow it out in the land business. Courseware, mentorship, tools, community, and even deal funding. Look, because you're here listening to me, you know that Dave and I don't hold anything back. That's a founding principle we've had from the beginning. With the Land.MBA, you get everything we have to offer. There are no upsells. And now, through popular demand, we have transformed our highly regarded one-to-one coaching program into a small group format at a fraction of the price. If you're ready to build a 6-figure income with the freedom of being your own boss, go right now to www.land.mba/fortune. That's www.land.mba/fortune. Let us help you create your next path to wealth.
What else do you want?
The interesting thing about Mitch, I mean, here's a 7-figure investor. Mitch does very, very targeted mailings. His mailings are generally pretty small because he's done so much research and so much targeting before he sends the mail out. He knows where he's going. He understands those areas. And he puts probably more time into the selection of those areas and the pricing than most people will do on a whole county with 5,000 mailers.
Yeah.
And that's how he wins.
And hence, he's getting really, really good conversion rate. higher than most people, very much higher than most people, and spending a hell of a lot less money on mail because he's being very, very targeted and specific. Now, that said, also depends on your profile, right? If you're a person who just can't stand to spend that much time, analyzing and being behind the screen and analyzing data and scrubbing data and all that, and you just want to shotgun blast everything, and instead of spending time, spend more money on mail, you can do that. But I think, and that is becoming a less and less effective strategy. I think the segmenting down and targeting and positioning is the way to go to create. In fact, that's worked for me, but it is time consuming.
Back in those days in 2016, when you can get those kind of response rates and conversion rates, it was fine. But now, when 1% to 3% has translated into 1/10 to 0.5%, now the amount of mail it would take to generate an equivalent amount of deals is much, much greater. And so the value of doing this work on the front end has increased. And even when you do that, though, it's not like every property is the same. I mean, I think you really have to create the right offer for the right property. And that sounds very time consuming, but it doesn't have to be if you've got a decent system. And I would say that personally, not a big fan of neutral offers. I feel like they suck up a ton of time. Most people have an unreasonable expectation that they're going to get a full market offer. And then when they don't, they feel like it's a bait and switch and they get pissed off. It's not like you can't get deals out of it. Of course you can. Many people do, but not crazy about it, which leaves the two different types of letters, right? You've got blind offers. Hi, my name is Howard, and I'd like to offer you this much money for your property. And then we've got this thing called ranged offers, which sometimes they're called hybrid offers, which is, hey, we typically pay between this much and this much for properties like yours. And that range, I like a hybrid because it is a hybrid between the blind and the neutral. It doesn't put a specific price out there, which is kind of like a neutral, which means it's easier to find something that you might find relevant to you, something that a price that resonates. But it also does put some numbers out there and creates some expectation. And so the chances are that if somebody responds to that, they understand where you're coming from, and they basically self-selected in as opposed to self-selecting out. So You've got these two different letter types. But Dave, I would say that it doesn't matter what letter type you use. It doesn't matter how good your letter is or how bad your letter is. If your pricing is off, you're done. Because people look at that they want to, why are they going to engage with you? Because they want to get money for their property. And they're going to look at that number, and everything else is going to be this haze of words around it. They may read it eventually, but really it's that number. And while we put all kinds of time and effort into our letters and time and effort into our pricing, they're giving it what? A half a second to a second. That's how quick they're going to look at this. Yeah. And they're going to make an instant a judgment, which is not based upon anything other than an immediate, do I like it or don't I like it? Is it going in the trash, or is it something I want to spend more time on? That's how much time you get, like half a second. And if that number is off, you're done.
Yeah. I mean, don't get us wrong. The letter is important because let's say all things are equal. Let's say, in a competitive environment, they get 10 letters in a certain period of time, and let's say 3 of them have similar pricing offers that are in the ballpark of what they think is reasonable and they would sell for. In that case, the letter could make a difference. If you're local, could make a difference. Those are some of the nuances that could make a difference. It's very, empirical. It's difficult to have data on that. But over the number of people we've spoken to, a number of tens and tens of hundreds of thousands of letters that we've sent out in our careers, I think that's a pretty decent opinion. But like you said, if the pricing is far off, you're done. Now, you can even have. We recently got a deal where our pricing was pretty spot on. And they had been getting, they had been getting real low balls, of course, from people who don't know what they're doing, and also really high stuff and accepted offers, and those people never closed. And which, and that happens all the time, right? You talk to somebody in intake and you've offered them a reasonable offer, and they say, well, I got an offer for, 10,000 more. And I tell them, well, if you really did, you should take it. But I'm going to keep your number and follow up with you, because I'm betting you dollars to donuts they don't close, because I can tell you right now what they've offered you is way too high. When they actually look at it, they're going to try to backtrack. And so, the guy who I spoke to said, we've gotten really low offers that are ridiculous, and we got a lot higher offers, and, where people didn't close, and your offer seemed to be reasonable. And so we went with you. So that's just another issue that you can have with getting pricing right. You won't lose all the time. You want it right, because if you get it high, it wastes everybody's time. You're going to get a lot more calls if you're too high, and very few deals. That said, if I miss, I would rather miss high than low, because low, you won't even get a call, unless it's just to tell you to screw off. But at least if you miss high, you're going to get some calls, and you have an opportunity to walk it back. And that does, we've walked deals back before, for sure. And if we'd have been way low, we may have never even got those opportunities. But if you're really outrageously high, then,
but you can't negotiate with somebody who doesn't call you back.
Yeah. Good luck. So.
Yeah. And look, I'm a marketer. All the other factors of a letter, they matter to me. The quality of the paper, the font, is it color versus black and white, the logo, because when people look at that, they're going to make this instantaneous judgment. Is this, just some schmo down the block, or is this a professional company? They could be right or wrong. It doesn't matter. They're just going to have an instant perception of it. As they say, you only get one chance to make a first impression. Right. But I will tell you that no matter how good your letter is, if your pricing is off, it doesn't matter. And no matter how bad your letter is, if your pricing is on, it matters.
Yes.
Yes. I would, any day of the week, I would rather have a bad letter with good pricing than a good letter with bad pricing.
Absolutely. Yep. So now back to our offer types. We covered neutral.
Yeah.
We covered ranged. Did we cover blind?
Well, we talked briefly about ranged, but I think we should just dig into it a little bit more. So
let me just set it up a little bit, because people, ultimately, we want to make things as easy as possible for the seller, and which is a blind offer that is spot on or damn close. Right. So ultimately, where we want to get to is a blind offer. But now let's go back and talk about ranged offers, and then move into blind, and you'll kind of see the funnel as to why we want to ultimately get to blind offers and how.
So we talked about neutral offers, not a fan.
Yep.
What's the next thing that's just awful? The next thing that's the worst thing you could do is send a blind with bad pricing.
Yeah.
I would, it's right. It's pretty darn close to a neutral, right? Especially if it's wrong on the low side. You're just not going to get a call back, or you're just going to get an angry call. It's going to waste your money. It's going to waste your time. It's going to make everything. So our goal is either a blind offer with really accurate pricing, or a ranged offer, which a good price is probably somewhere between the low and the high in that ranged offer.
Hey, folks, people often talk about automating and outsourcing your land flipping business, but what does that really mean? Generic solutions leave it to you to figure out how to set up and maintain the automations. I've been running my land business on Land.MBA for over 3 years because it's a total solution and allows me to focus on being a great land investor. Land.MBA was built specifically for land investing by a land investor. And with many of the most successful people in the business using it for years, it's evolved into one of the most feature-rich solutions on the market. Some of the key benefits I get are being able to create and manage mail campaigns and neighbor letters. I'm able to automate tasks amongst my team, create contracts and deeds, and email, text, or mail them within a few clicks. I can automatically capture sales leads from any lead source, including Facebook Messenger. Then it automatically pushes those leads into my sales funnel so that I can manually follow up, but they also go into my automated drip campaign. And since LandSpeed's a total cloud-based solution, I can run my business from anywhere in the world with a phone, laptop, or tablet. So if you want to turn your hobby into a professional, scalable business, just go to landspeedtech.com/Dave to receive a $150 discount today.
So these ranged offers do two things. One is they set a good expectation on price so that a seller will say, okay, somewhere in between that high and low, I can see an opportunity to get to a deal that I could live with. And so if they respond to it, it's because they believe that there's a possibility to do a deal. If they don't think there's a possibility, they probably won't respond to it. And much less likely that they're going to just waste your time with the angry call as well. But the other thing it does is it really positions you nicely for the negotiation, because I mean, normally, if you send a blind offer and then you do the due diligence and you want to walk back that price, that's a little bit of a hard conversation. But if you give them this range and then all of a sudden, they don't know where in the range you're going to end up, you do the due diligence. So long as the due diligence leads to a price that's somewhere in the range, it doesn't look like a bait and switch, because it looks like, you were actually spot on with your thinking.
Exactly. And what we do, it also enables you to sort of quantify. We have a methodology where we score the property 1 to 5, based on road access. Is there power? Is there water? Views, location, all of that stuff. And we give it a score of 1 to 5, and we're able to explain that to the customer, and it's logical. They still don't necessarily always like it or agree, and you don't get the deal. But, very many people, they can understand that it's not just, a wet finger in the air to them. And you can sort of quantify your pricing methodology to them.
So how do you know when to send a blind and when to send a ranged?
So that's a great question. And this leads into how we ultimately want to get to a blind, because that makes it easier for the customer. If they like the price, they can just sign it and send it. But I would, until I develop a real expertise in that area. Now, there's nothing wrong actually with just staying with ranged. Okay. It depends on how much time you want to spend. But I think ultimately the conversion rate is best on on blind offers done right. And so if I'm going into an area new, like before I knew about ranged offers, I'd test an area with neutral offers, if there was really, really good data in the area and I felt pretty good that I was getting close on my blinds, and then I'd send blinds. But I would maybe send neutrals to part of the county, that didn't have great data, and blinds to the other that I was more sure of. But nowadays, when I'm going to a new area, I always start out with ranged, and so that gives me some wiggle room, some margin for error, and then once I've really understood the sub-county areas in that county accurately, then I can convert my offers to blinds the next time or the next time after that.
You ever mix and match within the same county?
Yeah, I have. Like I said earlier, where I used to do part neutral and part blind. Now I don't do neutrals at all anymore. Mm-hmm. I just do I would do part ranged and part blind. So if, and now more and more I use the polygon method and draw, so that's part of the segmenting, right? And I segment a county out. It's not uncommon for me to create 20 or 25 sub-county areas. They may or may not be subdivisions,
Right.
depending on how it's laid out, but they're clusters of activity. And I could have 20 or 25 of those little micro targeted areas. Now it takes time to build that, but ultimately it creates much more accurate offer pricing, because you're getting the specific comps to that, and then you're taking that list or that polygon with those comps, and you're matching that polygon that you've drawn on your map in your data source like data tree, and boom, pulling that little list for that one, and then the next one, and then the next one, and it enables you to really come up with accurate pricing. But it takes time, but it yields killer results
in every part of the county. So I think, where you've got great data and where you can look at and say, okay, I believe this is the right price per acre in this area, and there's enough comps to say that, my confidence level is high, boom, it's a blind offer. But if I don't have a lot of data, and I still like the county though, then I'll go out with the ranged because my confidence level is lower. And so it gets back. And so here's the big payoff, right? What's the title of this podcast? Is do this in 2022 to double your deals. And that is walk back from this idea of a one size fits all solution for all of your letters. With just a little bit of effort, you can send the right letter with the right price at the right time. And that's how you get not only responses, but the right responses that will lead to conversions. If you send the wrong letter, if you send the blind and you're way off, that's going to be a problem. If you send the ranged, it's probably not a huge problem, but it may not be as good as if you sent the blind. So figure out in any given area, I like the term that you use, this micro-targeted area of a county, and say, okay, if my confidence level's high, they're getting the blinds. And if my confidence level's lower, they're going to get the ranged. And you will maximize. So we talked at the beginning of the podcast about the difference between a response rate and a conversion rate.
Yep.
Obviously, we all want the conversions, but it's not an either or, right? It's sort of like email marketing, right? What do I want? I want people to click on the call to action. Well, they're not going to click on the call to action if they don't open the email, and they're not going to open the email if you don't have a great subject line. So they both matter.
Yeah.
But what we need to make sure that the responses we get from our mailings are good responses, are people who are actually interested in making a deal.
If you opportunity to convert. Yeah.
If you send out a ton of mail and your pricing is through the roof, you'll get a ton of response, but none of them are going to turn into deals. Those aren't good responses. Or if they're super, super low and everybody calls you and tells you what an asshole you are, that's a lot of response, but it's not going to translate into deals.
Yeah. I mean, usually it's just going to be crickets, but
yeah.
But one more point though, in the market we're in, and coming back to ranged, okay, if you're out in doing big Western properties, larger acreages, you're not having quite as big of a quick of appreciation related to homes. It's still fairly slow. So the other thing that I like about the ranged offer in this market, so like we said, ultimately you want to get to blind, but I want to put a caveat in there. If you're doing infill lots, if you're doing, cabin lots, land that is in hot areas where the housing is hot and also people are buying lots to build, that price can be fluctuating. And so your blind offers may not be easy to keep up with that. So in that case, I'll make an exception in those particular areas. I'm going to send ranged.
Yeah, we were talking prior to the podcast. You made this point I thought was really powerful, is that there are markets right now with what's going on in our country where the pricing is going up fairly steadily. So the price at the beginning of the year is much lower than the price for the same property later in the year. And with a ranged offer, it's possible that the validity of that offer works both on the low end and on the high end, because we know that we send out mail, and sometimes you get a response right away. Sometimes it takes a month. Sometimes you get a response a year later, sometimes longer.
Yeah.
So it would be nice if the way that letter was written and the pricing on it was just as valid at the end of the year as it was at the beginning. So you can get that with a ranged offer.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. Well, anything else to add? I think we've beat that horse dead.
Yeah, I think to get that level of accuracy, to put forth that level, a little bit of effort at the beginning, and then send the right letter to the right person with the right pricing on it, you are going to get more deals. I mean, you just are. But doing it takes some skill. I'm going to do a shameless plug. We have our new Master Your Pricing course at Land.MBA. It's pricemaster.land.mba is the URL. Just check it out. Just go take a look at it. We're not going to do a hard sell on you here, but it really trains you in great detail on how to come up with these micro target areas and how to build that pricing list so that you can get the kind of outcomes we're talking about. This is the way the pros are doing it. So if you're kind of at that point in your land investing career where you're ready to sort of make that march up from hobbyist up into full time and up to the 7-figure investor, you owe it to yourself to at least take a look at that.
Absolutely. I had fun teaching that course, creating it, and using that method myself, of course. And hey, the nice thing, the fact that we use this method is that we'll also keep as we develop new nuances and ways, methodologies and processes, we'll keep updating it for you. So check it out. Pricemaster.land.mba. And with that, I bid you adieu, and everybody have a great week.
See you later. We hope you enjoyed this episode, had a bit of fun, and walked away with some actionable insights that you can apply to your business. Dave and I have got some great content and interviews planned, so don't forget to rate and review, and of course subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. If we mention any interesting links or tools, you'll find them in the show notes. To learn more about Land.MBA, visit our website at, wait for it, Land.MBA. See you next time on the Land.MBA podcast.